God's chosen ones. People are trying to figure you out, but they can't trace grace. They swore you were done, until they saw you rise from ruins they built to bury you. You went quiet, and they called it failure. You moved in silence, and they called it surrender. They never knew that while they laughed at your stillness, heaven was downloading a blueprint they'd never be able to decode. Now, they zoom in on your smile. They reread your captions like scripture, and the same ones who ghosted you now stalk your glow like it's a mystery they missed. So if they're staring, confused, whisper this in the comments. 440. They don't understand it, because they were never meant to. You weren't falling apart. You were falling into position. The war they never saw. They thought your silence meant surrender. But only God's chosen ones know what it means to go ghost. Not because they gave up, but because they were being recoded. You didn't leave. You were led. They whispered, she must be depressed. He's clearly lost. They used your absence as the proof of your downfall. What they didn't know was that your disappearance was divine instruction. You weren't just healing. You were downloading. You were being positioned, layer by layer, in places their performance will never reach. They laughed when you stopped posting. Now they screenshot your glow like a prophecy they missed. Let's tell the truth. They misread your discipline as delusion. They mistook your pause as punishment. They called your boundaries bitterness, when really, you were guarding sacred soil. They don't understand why you didn't announce the comeback, why you didn't flex, flaunt, or fight back, because you didn't rise to prove them wrong. You rose because heaven said now, and now that you're glowing, they're digging through your old photos like it's a crime scene, checking your followers like it's a strategy, rereading your silence like it's encrypted. But this wasn't performance, it was preparation. You weren't performing for the crowd. You were being positioned by the Creator. How did you do it? How did we miss it? If you're watching this, it's not by accident. Your silence didn't fail you. It formed you. It separated you, so heaven could reveal you. Type 444 in the comments if they're watching you now, but still can't figure out how you pulled off the rise they swore would never come. Chapter 1. You weren't falling apart, you were falling into position. They thought you were unraveling, but chosen ones don't break. We bend into divine alignment. You moved in silence. You showed up less. You replied slower. You didn't explain. And they took notes like they were watching a collapse. What they didn't see was that heaven had quietly removed you from the noise, not to isolate you, but to initiate you. They misread the assignment. They thought you were hiding, but in truth, you were being wrapped in sacred instructions, wrapped in warfare that had no audience, wrapped in whispers only your soul could hear. You weren't falling apart. You were falling into position. Every unanswered call was training. Every delay was a reroute to divine protection. Every time you were ghosted, overlooked, underestimated, God was whispering, keep still. I'm working the room. Let's tell the truth. You questioned it too. You asked, God, did I miss it? You wondered if your stillness meant you were behind. But your soul knew. This isn't punishment. This is placement. Because the truth is, you weren't spiraling. You were sinking. Heaven doesn't announce upgrades. They look like breakdowns. While they posted highlight reels, you were building character in the dark. While they clapped for each other's noise, you were healing wounds into wisdom. While they chased clout, you were catching codes. And now they're obsessed, watching every move, studying every smile, asking, how did she get there? How did he flip the script without the script? Because your comeback wasn't noise. It was confirmation, and they can't trace it. Because it wasn't built from logic. It was built from obedience. If this were you, would you have trusted the silence long enough to bloom? They laughed at your pause, but they never saw the pressure. They whispered about your stillness, but they never felt the storm you stood through without bending. They thought you were retreating, but you were responding to instructions they were never meant to receive. So when you walk in the room now and their energy shifts, let it. You're not disrupting the space. You are the shift. And when they ask how you did it, you won't need to say a word. Your life will speak. Your presence will echo. Your silence will scream. This wasn't survival. This was sacred strategy. Chapter 2. They mocked the blueprint because they couldn't read it. They took one look at your paused season and assumed the show was over. But the blueprint wasn't for their eyes. It was written in a language only alignment can translate. They laughed when you stopped explaining. They mocked your quiet. They spun stories around your silence like it was a headline. Oh, she must be struggling. He gave up. She used to post all the time what happened. What happened? You stopped performing for people who were never part of the plan. Because heaven doesn't post announcements, God doesn't go live to validate you. Your promotion was encoded in prayer, not platforms, and the ones who mocked your stillness. They couldn't read the architecture of your assignment. They mistook your disappearance for defeat. But it was download. You weren't drifting. You were drilling into alignment. You were getting low so God could build high. Here's what they didn't understand. Chosen ones don't move off applause. We move off instructions. We don't follow trends. We follow timing. They thought you were behind because they only understand speed, not sequence. See, your blueprint didn't come with blue check marks. No big reveal. No coming soon. Just sacred whispers, silent revisions, and private obedience. And that confused them. They couldn't figure out why the silence never stopped you. While you glowed brighter, the more invisible you became. Because what they didn't realize is that the real glow-up doesn't announce itself. It just arrives. They zoomed in on the fruit, but they never stayed long enough to see the famine. They want the shine, but not the strategy. They want the harvest, but never sowed a seed. They can't figure out how you did it because they weren't invited to the blueprint. Let's break it down. You built in secret. You healed in silence. You obeyed when it made no sense. And now, the reward is confusing to them because you're becoming broke every formula they swore was required. They keep refreshing their feed looking for how you rose. But your elevation didn't come from algorithms. It came from anointing. You didn't force. You flawed it. You didn't perform. You positioned. You didn't break. You became. They mocked what they couldn't comprehend. But heaven never needed them to co-sign your calling. You weren't built to be legible. You were built to be legendary. And now that the vision is visible, they're scrambling for the map. But the blueprint, it was divine, and it was always yours. Chapter 3. Your comeback broke their ego. They were fine with you when you were quiet, but your rise, your glow, your peace, it shattered every lie they told themselves about you. They didn't mind you when you were doubting. They liked you uncertain. They preferred you small, scared, unsure, because when you played small, they felt big. But the moment you got back up, the moment your silence turned into strategy, the moment your glow no longer asked for permission, that's when their ego began to crumble. They clapped when you were clapping for them, but when it was your turn, suddenly, silence. You ever notice how the room gets quieter now? No congratulations, no reposts, no applause. But the views are still there. The lurking is loud. The obsession, palpable. They can't look away, but they can't admit why. They don't hate your win. They hate what it reveals about their own limits. Because here's the real reason they're uncomfortable. Your comeback wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Not without them. Not so holy. Not so healed. They thought the version of you they walked away from was the final draft. They didn't know that the rejection was the rewrite. that the loss was the launch, that the silence was the sentence that heaven needed to begin your next chapter. So when you showed up again, sharper, softer, stronger, unbothered, unreachable, undeniable, they had no language for it, only ego. And ego, it doesn't whisper grace. It screams confusion. They tell themselves, she got lucky. He's changed, but not in a good way. She's just doing too much now. But the truth is, you didn't change. You remembered? You remembered the blueprint. You remembered the God who hid you. You remembered who you were when no one was clapping. And now your piece is too loud for their performance to compete with. They're spiraling because you didn't beg for a seat. You built your own table. You didn't need their energy. Now they need yours just to feel alive. This is the part they'll never say out loud. They needed your failure to validate their stagnancy, your glow-up. It's their ego's eviction notice. Your silence didn't break them. Your becoming did. They measured you by performance. You rose through presence. They flexed with filters. You anchored in fire. And now, the quiet one, the hidden one, the dismissed one, you're the storm that disrupted their forecast. Let them sit in it. Let them scroll in silence. Let them pretend they're unaffected. Because they know you didn't just rise, you resurrected, and you did it without explaining a thing. Chapter 4. They can't trace you because you don't move like the world. They keep asking, how did she do it? Where did he come from? But here's what they don't get. You weren't built from formulas. You were carved in fire. They're scrambling for your secret. They think you followed a 10-step plan. They think you got lucky. They think you met the right people. They don't understand that your success didn't start in the spotlight. It started in the dark, in silence, in obedience, in surrender. You didn't rehearse this. You remembered it. You didn't build a brand. You became a blueprint. You don't follow trends. You follow truth. They can't trace you because you don't walk on their map. You don't move for views. You move for vibration. You don't post to prove. You post to remind. They scroll deep into your timeline, zoom in on your captions, mimic your tone, your phrases, your posture. But it never hits the same because presence can't be plagiarized. You weren't made to be copied. You were designed to be confirmed. While they chased algorithms, you aligned with atmosphere. While they performed for attention, you anchored in stillness. While they were yelling, you were listening. That's why they can't trace your steps, because you weren't walking, you were flowing. You don't move on human time. You arrive on divine instruction. You don't crash parties. You shift atmospheres. You don't network. You get summoned. Let them study you. Let them dissect your joy. Let them mimic your peace. But what they'll never access is the pain that built this posture, the silence that downloaded this glow, the rejection that became your resonance. They want the glow up, but they can't survive the grief it came from. They want the stage, but not the silence it took to deserve it. You didn't rise from coaching. You rose from crushing. They want to wear your crown, but they don't want your crosses. They want the anointing, but not the altar it cost you. They're chasing aesthetics. You became essence. You weren't programmed for performance. You were encrypted for impact. And now every room feels you before they see you. They try to trace you with logic. But logic doesn't translate alignment. You're not just untraceable. You're unrepeatable. You weren't born of trends. You were breathed into existence by purpose. So let them screenshot. Let them scroll. Let them speculate. You're not here to be explained. You're here to be felt. Chapter 5. You look like magic, but you moved like a machine. They call it luck now. They say, it must be nice. But they didn't see the discipline, the decisions, the deaths you had to die in silence. You weren't sprinkled with pixie dust. You were trained in fire while they were sleeping in. You were warring before dawn, while they were outperforming. You were pruning. While they posted reels, you posted prayers. You didn't float here, you fought here. And the glow they can't stop watching. That's not magic, that's machinery. They don't see the wiring, the systems, the repetition, the sweat. The days you wanted to quit but still obeyed. They think you blew up.
Oh, but you broke down behind closed doors for years.
They didn't see the nights you cried, then still showed up. Still wrote, still worked, still served. They love your outcome, but they couldn't survive your obedience. You became a system, built in rhythm, run by faith, fueled by silence. While they were chasing dopamine, you were chasing destiny. You weren't trying to go viral. You were trying to stay aligned. You weren't chasing clout. You were chasing character. This is what they'll never post. The dark nights of the soul, the quiet battles, the therapy, the breakdowns, the rebuilding, the surrender. They see the light now, but not the sacrifice it cost you to become it. They weren't there when you deleted what was draining you, walked away from tables that paid well but robbed your soul, chose alignment over applause, stayed silent when clapping back would have been easy. You didn't glow up, you grew up. And that kind of maturity doesn't trend, it transforms. They can't believe how easy you make it look now. But ease is what obedience looks like after long seasons of hidden consistency. You trained in secret, you executed in silence. And now your presence looks effortless. But that's only because your discipline was unseen. They didn't see you. Waking up when no one asked you to. Studying when no one clapped. Healing when no one checked in. Showing up anyway, every day anyway. They want your elevation, but not your execution. Now your name hits different. Your walk hits different. Your silence shakes rooms. And it's not ego, it's evidence. You are not the result of luck. You're the residue of legacy. They say you came out of nowhere, but you were always there. In the grind, in the groaning, in the God moments nobody else noticed. So let them think it was easy. Let them call it effortless, because you don't owe them the process. You are the proof. You weren't built to be understood. You were built to be witnessed. They stared at your silence like it was defeat, but now they can't stop watching. Not because they believe in you, but because now they're starting to believe you were right all along. You didn't just survive. You didn't just rise. You remembered who you are, whose you are, and what you carry. And now the very ones who called you crazy study you like prophecy, whisper your name like a warning, try to figure out how you're shining with no spotlight. But let's tell the truth. You were glowing when they left. You were chosen when they laughed. You were powerful, even when you were posting nothing at all. The silence was strategy. The storm was sacred. And the glow up, it was never for them. It was for you, so you would know that even without a crowd, even without applause, even without a hand to hold, you were still the blueprint. So let me ask you something. Chosen one, have you noticed the stares, the sudden curiosity, the awkward compliments, the subtle obsession? They're not just wondering how you did it. They're asking God, how did we miss it? But don't explain. Don't shrink. Don't defend. You weren't built to be understood. You were built to be witnessed. This was never about showing off. This was about showing up for your assignment, for your calling, for your becoming. So when the watchers keep watching, let them. When they can't look away, let them. When they finally ask how you pulled it off, smile. And remember, they mocked the blueprint because they were never meant to read it. Whispered now. You didn't just rise. You aligned. You activated. You arrived. Not to be famous, but to be faithful. If this message spoke to you like it was written just for your story, type 7 in the comments. Let the algorithm know The chosen ones are no longer hiding. And if you're ready to walk deeper into your glow, into your calling, and into your blueprint, like this video, share it with another quiet warrior. And don't just subscribe, show up. Your next season requires presence,